Hi, my name's Eric. I'll be reading you selections from the e-edition of the Falmouth Enterprise, dated today, Friday, February 21st of 2025. Many of our listeners enjoy listening to this on the day of publication, which is Fridays, so the weather is important, even though much of it will have passed if you're listening to this on Monday or Tuesday. This afternoon, it'll be sunny. Tonight, mostly clear with a high around 33 today and a low around 18 tonight. Tomorrow, Saturday, during the day, it'll be sunny with a high near 35. At night, partly cloudy with a low around 29. Extended forecast for Sunday indicates mostly sunny during the day and partly cloudy at night with a high near 38 and a low around 28. Also important to know as we start, the meetings that are scheduled for next week. The Traffic Advisory Committee will meet Monday at 9 a.m. in the Town Hall. The Board of Health will meet Monday at 5:30 p.m. in the Town Hall. The Select Board meets Monday at 6:30 p.m. in the Town Hall. The Broadband MPL Board will meet Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. in the Town Hall. The Planning Board will meet Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. in the Town Hall. The Conservation Commission will meet Wednesday at 7 p.m. via Zoom. Agricultural Commission will meet Thursday at 5:30 p.m. in the Town Hall. The Zoning Board will meet Thursday at 6 p.m. in the Town Hall. And the Community Preservation Committee will meet Thursday at 6:30 p.m. in the School Administration Building. And since the Select Board is meeting on Monday, February 24th at the Town Hall at 5:30 p.m. with an executive session, here is their agenda. Executive session begins. Discuss strategy with respect to litigation, Falmouth Southerly, LLC, where discussion in an open session would have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the town. To discuss strategy with respect to litigation, PFAS, PFAS, product liability class action, where discussion in an open session would have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the town. Again. Then open session. Call to order, Pledge of Allegiance, recognition, announcements, and public comment. Then public hearings, fee hearings, discuss, consider, and vote proposed Recreation Department fee changes. Business, discuss and consider a draft charge document and a vote to approve the establishment of a short-term rental advisory committee. Discuss the Municipal Empowerment Act and consider drafting a letter of support. Discuss and consider a vote to send a letter of endorsement to the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities for the affordable housing project at 48 Benjamin Nyes Lane in North Falmouth. Discuss and consider the approval of a letter to the Cape Cod Commission concerning a conservation restriction for 41, 59, and 48 Theater Drive and 0 Boxbury Hill Road. Vote article recommendations for the April 2025 annual town meeting. Update and discuss non-compliant soils at the John Neal baseball fields. Then the consent agenda. Administrative orders. Consider a vote to approve the petition of NStar Electric Company, doing business as Eversource Energy and Verizon New England, for permission to install a new pole at Terhune Drive to be labeled 570/4-5, approximately 80 feet west of existing pole 570-4. This pole location is necessary for a new underground cable line from Eversource Station 933. Consider a vote to approve the petition of NStar Electric Company, doing business as Eversource Energy, to install along Red Wing Terrace 2 new manholes. The installation of the 2 new manholes is to address the faulted section of direct buried cable along Pebble Lane and Red Wing Terrace and to install fault indicators. Consider a vote to approve the petition of NStar Electric Company, doing business as Eversource Energy, to install on Pebble Lane 2 new manholes. The installation of the 2 new manholes is to address the faulted section of direct buried cable and install fault indicators. I thought I had repeated it, but no, there's 2 different ones doing almost the exact same thing with different numbers. Consider a vote to accept a donation in the amount of $500 from Joan Tweedell to the Cultural Council donation account for Music at the Table. Consider a vote to accept the amendment to water easement and drainage easement at 64 Technology Park Drive from the Falmouth EDIC. Consider a vote to opt in to early voting in person for the May 20th annual town election. Consider a vote to approve the solar rooftop lease with Select Energy Development LLC for the water treatment plant at 650 Gifford Street. Then the minutes. Review and vote to approve minutes of meetings. And public session begins October 25th, 2021 and February 10th, 2025. Then the town manager's supplemental report and the select board reports. Now, back to the front page of today's Falmouth Enterprise, dated February 21st. Sheriff and the Chief say immigration enforcement's not our role, by Devin Ankeny. The Barnstable County Sheriff, Donna Buckley, said her department will stay its course on immigration. Sheriff Buckley stated her office will not impede the federal government, but will also not do U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, known as ICE, officers work for them. On January 21st, Acting Deputy Attorney General Emil J. Bove III issued a memo stating that the U.S. Justice Department will pursue legal action against local and state-level law enforcement agencies that are viewed as resisting, obstructing, and otherwise failing to comply with ICE's deportation goals. That memo came on as one of the earliest in an ongoing flurry of the Donald J. Trump administration's actions seeking to remove immigrants without legal status from the U.S. Mr. Bove's memo also directs Justice Department lawyers to identify state and local laws, policies, and activities that don't follow President Trump's new executive orders and, where appropriate, to take legal action to challenge such laws. Sheriff Buckley added that her office will continue to provide ICE with information concerning an already incarcerated individual's scheduled release from her office's custody. ICE typically requests information involving release date, transfer details, or the death of someone the federal immigration agency is pursuing. The sheriff's office, Sheriff Buckley wrote, cannot hold an individual based on an ICE detention request alone. Her office will provide pertinent details, the same details which she says she would provide any other relevant federal agency. Though the actions and approach haven't changed, Sheriff Buckley said, rhetoric regarding immigration has. With a federal crackdown on immigration-related dissent, the sheriff's office has had to be more careful with phrasing, acknowledging the increased scrutiny of law enforcement agencies. Little did we know before Mr. Trump's inauguration how significant choosing words was, Sheriff Buckley said over the phone, adding that before January 20th there was no issue between the federal government, ICE, and Barnstable County regarding immigration. Out of 268 total prisoners, 5 incarcerated individuals currently in the Barnstable County Correctional Facility have ICE detainers. An ICE detainer is a U.S. Department of Homeland Security request that ICE detain someone. Such a request is notably not a warrant, nor is it equivalent to one. Since President Trump's inauguration, the sheriff's office has released one person to ICE's custody. Falmouth's local police department approach is similar to the sheriff's. Chief Jeffrey Lurie said his department has no federal authority in these matters and that it would only provide already publicly available information if ICE requested it. The police department has no capability to run immigration checks. Chief Lurie said that the department would only get involved with immigration enforcement if a situation required police presence for the purpose of public safety. He said that besides that, which he said is the same as the department's broad duties, the only time ICE would be involved with the department is if it has a judicial warrant or if ICE takes someone into custody after they were released from the police department's custody. Lieutenant Ryan Hurt said he has no recollection of ICE picking up a person as they left the department's custody in his 10-year tenure with the police department. The next headline, drilling has begun along shore drive for cabling project by Devin Ankeny. Eversource says its Martha's Vineyard reliability and 91 cable replacement projects are proceeding on schedule. Along the Shining Sea Bikeway, cable that needs to be pulled under the path is expected to be delivered in the next 2 weeks. In early March, the power company will begin the actual cable pulling, external communications manager Caitlin Woods wrote in an email. Crews will restore and pave the bike path as soon as possible following this work, Ms. Woods wrote. We've been coordinating closely with the town, and we've agreed to wait until early April to pave the bike path to avoid cold temperatures impacting the asphalt's ability to set and cure properly. Right now, the bike path remains closed from Terhune Drive to Locust Street, and the Depot Avenue Pathway parking lot is also closed. On Surf Drive, horizontal directional drilling, known as HDD, is underway now that the 100-year-old water main along the road has been replaced, courtesy of Eversource. Eversource has also finished installing the new duct bank and necessary conduit. That drilling has begun in the Mill Road parking lot and in the nearby roadway. The Surf Drive and Shore Street drilling will begin in the coming weeks, Ms. Woods wrote. To dampen the noise produced by the large drills, which may need to be operated around the clock to stay on schedule, Eversource has installed sound curtains. The sound curtains provide noise mitigation for the HDD construction activity, which is progressing on schedule, and they'll be disassembled and removed after our work is completed, Ms. Woods wrote. Work to restore the parking lots is expected to be completed by early May. In late January, Eversource reported to the Select Board that it's on track to complete its work on schedule with a May 2nd deadline agreed upon between the company and the town. Trotting Park baseball field lead levels are triple the state cap, by Devin Ankeny. The risk assessment report for the John L. Neal Youth Baseball Complex is in. Analysis of the soils beneath the three fields found several toxins, including arsenic, antimony, zinc, and polychlorinated bicarbonates known as PCBs. But the biggest concern, the company said, is the lead that was detected. The report was released to the enterprise yesterday at 4:08 p.m. In one of the fields, Field 1, the northernmost field at the site, lead concentrations 3 times those deemed acceptable by the Mass DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection, were found within the first 6 inches of topsoil. DEP's limit for lead is 200 parts per million. Some soil samples taken from Field 1 found 600 parts per million. The fields, located off Gifford Street in Trotting Park, were built on top of an old town dump. In September, the town was first alerted to potentially dangerous materials in the soil. In early January, the town closed the baseball complex after learning that the health threat was real. This concentration of lead, detected in topsoil on Field 1, could pose an unacceptable risk to young children if repeated contact with soil beneath the existing turf was allowed, the report's summary reads. The testing company, Arcadis, recommended that Field 1 remain closed for use and that the town install a geotextile membrane, or a fabric covering over the field, and then cover that with 2 or 3 feet of soil before it can be safe for baseball again. Contaminants, including lead, were also found in the topsoil of the other 2 fields, but to a lesser extent, the report states. Samples from Field 2 topped out at 190 parts per million of lead, and Field 3 peaked at 45 parts per million. That means 2 of the 3 baseball fields don't pose a risk to health for children contacting lead in topsoil on those fields, the report states. But deeper soil samples found much higher concentrations of contaminants beneath all 3 fields. Between 6 inches and 5 feet deep in the soil, Field 2 exceeds state lead limits by 185%, and Field 3 by 25%. Arcadis stated that while these deeper contaminants don't pose an immediate threat, they could be troublesome over the long term. The company said the town could allow play to resume on Fields 1 and 2 for the next year, as long as the topsoil is tested before play starts in the spring and periodically throughout the playing season. Next year, though, the town may have to look into adding more topsoil. Besides lead, other landfill waste materials like glass were also found on the walking paths, particularly between Fields 1 and 2. Those materials could pose a safety risk under current conditions and should be addressed to mitigate risks from physical hazards. Arcadis recommended the town temporarily cover the paths with another geotextile material and add a soil covering. The report also states that there's no imminent hazard to the surrounding environment. The full report's 80 pages long, though Arcadis wrote that the information's not necessarily final. Additional investigation into the nature and extent of the landfill material underlying this area is ongoing, and it's being managed in accordance with the Massachusetts Contingency Plan, the report states. These investigation activities include a geophysical study and additional soil borings to determine the extent of the landfill, and groundwater assessment to determine groundwater flow direction and groundwater quality. Town manager Michael Renshaw was not immediately available for comment, and the Select Board is scheduled to discuss this report at its meeting on Monday, February 24th. As you heard, it is an agenda item. Our next headline, marine borings start next week for outfall soil testing, by Katie Nelson. Marine boring work will be visible offshore near Kite Park, south of Falmouth's Inner Harbor, starting Thursday or Friday, depending on weather conditions. The borings are the next vital step in researching and designing the outfall pipe that's planned for West Falmouth. The outfall pipe will discharge treated wastewater into Vineyard Sound. If all permitting and construction goes to plan, the outfall has an estimated completion date of 2032. At each boring location, subsurface soil will be collected by the drill. The soil will be analyzed and characterized, Wastewater Superintendent Amy A. Lowell said. The data collected from the soil samples will inform the materials and design used to construct the outfall pipe. Collecting subsurface soil this way avoids impacting marine habitats, Ms. Lowell said. The 6 offshore marine borings will be done between 300 to 2,800 feet offshore. There'll be one boring done on land in Kite Park, Ms. Lowell said. She added that the one onshore boring at Kite Park will create some noise, and work will be completed within 2 days. The park will be restored when work is completed, she said. Each boring will be 6 feet in diameter and approximately 100 feet deep, Ms. Lowell said. Residents will be able to see the jack-up barge from the shore. A crew will be on the jack-up barge 24 hours a day, and 12 hours of drilling can be expected each day. Depending on weather, the barge, which is coming from Long Island, will likely be in place on Wednesday. This work is very weather dependent, Ms. Lowell said, and as long as the weather cooperates, Ms. Lowell said, work should be completed by March 24th. Moving inside the Falmouth Enterprise of Friday, February 21st, Lawrence Lynch permit will require a commission review, by Katie Nelson. Lawrence Lynch Corporation's request to renew its town special permit for its excavation, processing, and storage facility at 160 Thomas Landers Road in Hatchville will undergo Cape Cod Commission review. The zoning board referred the project to the commission during its meeting last week. The town issued its original special permit in 1990 for the site, which is within the Great Pond Overlay District. All developments within the Overlay District is subject to town regulations that protect water quality of the ponds and groundwater within the district, as well as regulate stormwater runoff that may impact the area. The town's building department, in a referral to the zoning board, said it considered the permit granted to Lawrence Lynch in 1990 to be null and void. Special permits usually expire 2 years from the date they're issued. The building department requested a third-party verification review. Attorney Edward Kirk represented Lawrence Lynch Realty Corporation, reported that through extensive correspondence with the Cape Cod Commission regarding the review, it was determined by the Chief Regulatory Officer of the Commission that a review is in fact necessary before any further permitting from the town can be issued. As the original permitting authority, the Zoning Board of Appeals is required to make a formal referral to the Cape Cod Commission. To be reviewed, the project needs to meet the Development of Regional Impact, a DRI, as it's known, threshold, which this project does. This project required a DRI review due to its size and characteristics of the lot. Board member Mark Finneran asked if the threshold for review from the Cape Cod Commission was 100,000 square feet. Chairwoman Suzanne Murphy said that it was, and Mr. Finneran answered, "This is well beyond that. Seems like a no-brainer, so to speak," and the board voted unanimously to make the referral. Our next headline, Steamship Authority to give area nonprofits free advertising, by Devin Ankeny. Area nonprofit groups will soon be able to advertise their programs and services on Steamship Authority ferries for free. The authority's Board of Governors, in its meeting on Tuesday, February 18th, unanimously approved a measure that will set aside 1/4 of its ferry advertising slots for nonprofit organizations in one of the authority's 5 port communities on the Cape and Islands. The plan, which was put forth by Communications Director Sean Driscoll, will serve to make use of the occasionally empty slots, while also giving exposure to organizations that might not have funding available to do so. This idea really came up as thinking about ways we could support our communities and the many nonprofits that do good work, Mr. Driscoll said. We periodically get requests for donations of not only tickets and or giveaways, but also for advertising space. So I wanted to firm up a structure and policy. Nonprofits will enter an advertisement lottery for each of the authority's ferry lines, and once the lottery period ends, the authority will pick random winners and cover the cost of production and placement of the advertisement posters. The authority, however, will not be responsible for creative direction. Poster designs will still have to adhere to the authority's standard advertising policy, which aims to avoid controversial or crude subject matter. The change comes less than 2 months after the authority's Board of Governors voted to reinstate advertising on its ferries. That policy reinstatement revived a roughly $100,000 annual revenue stream after 5 months with no advertisements. Now, paid advertisements will be back and alongside nonprofit posters for ferry riders to see. I like the policy, said Robert Jones, Barnstable representative to the board. I think we should be helping out nonprofits as much as we can. The cost to the authority will be minimal, Mr. Driscoll said. Poster production is only about $25. However, the 22 by 28-inch posters can put a significant financial burden on nonprofits. The least expensive option available is a 3-month off-peak season run on the MV Eagle, which generally makes the Hyannis-Nantucket route. That option costs $1,000 for just one poster. The most costly option is $93,000 for a 6-month stint on the MV Island home. Mr. Driscoll added that he doesn't anticipate that regular advertisement sales will fill up in the coming years, citing experience from past years. That should mean there'll be enough slots for nonprofits. Mr. Driscoll also said he'd like to hold the lottery as a totally new iteration each year. But if too many nonprofits enter the lottery in the coming years, he might look to change the policy to give preference to nonprofits who lost out in previous years. Terence Keneally, General Counsel, was asked if the limit allowing only nonprofits to those principally located in Woods Hole, Hyannis, Nantucket, Oaks Bluff, and Vineyard Haven would cause any legal issues. Mr. Keneally said no and voiced his support for the policy. I don't anticipate any problems. We're focusing on state-authorized nonprofit organizations, and I think it's going to be a very good program. The Financial Committee supports $9.9 million police budget and a petition for a Woods Hole detail by Devin Ankeny. The Finance Committee voted this week to recommend a police department budget for the coming fiscal year that increases spending by 15%. In its meeting February 12th, the committee unanimously recommended town meeting voters approve $9,852,625 for the police department's budget. Chief Jeffrey A. Lurie said that the spending increase, which is largely composed of increasing salary costs, will help fully staff the department. We will be, for the first time during his tenure, fully staffed, Chief Lurie said, barring injuries or other unforeseen difficulties. Chief Lurie justified the increased salary spending, saying the staffing push that brought in 27 people in 18 months and contractual increases are the cost of doing business. Looking ahead, Chief Lurie said bringing 2 canine units to town is on his list of priorities, as is a dedicated traffic enforcement unit. Chief Lurie said his priorities moving ahead also include getting a new building for the department. The need for us to get out of 750 Main Street is paramount, he said. The departmental budget, though, was not the only police matter that the Finance Committee scrutinized. In April, town meeting voters will weigh Article 18, a petition article that seeks $80,000 to pay for a police detail pilot program in Woods Hole this summer. The details would monitor traffic around the ferry terminal in Woods Hole and crack down on big trucks that idle too long in the parking lot. Finance Committee member Russell J. Murphy said that the article is a good use of money from the Ferry Embarkation Fund. This is in my opinion, perfect allocation of this money, Mr. Murphy said. The funds are there, and the police chief has enthusiastically embraced the idea and supported it. Though the measure gained the Finance Committee's recommendation, members Peter Hargraves and Joseph LeMay voted against the recommendation. Mr. Hargraves said the article is not specific enough to the goal it's described as having. And he added he supports the effort, but thinks the article itself should be specific to the issues on which the police detail will be focusing. Town manager Michael Renshaw said that if the pilot program is successful, the town will push to fund a permanent detail in Woods Hole. In other business, the Finance Committee recommended that town meeting voters approve $1,343,067 for the Consolidated Communications Department and $461,007 for the Conservation Department. Energy efficiency decarbonization programs will be explained. The Falmouth Energy Committee will host a presentation by Cape Light Compact Chief Executive Officer Maggie Downey about the latest energy efficiency and decarbonization programs offered by Cape Light Compact. The event's set for March 5th. It begins at noon in Herman Foundation Meeting Room of the Falmouth Public Library. Ms. Downey's presentation will include information about energy coaching programs, energy saver home loans, heat loans, small business enhancements, and solar loans. Planners set to okay 10 units of workforce housing in T-Ticket by Katie Nelson. The Planning Board has closed its hearing on a 10-unit workforce housing complex planned at 4 Sandwich Road in T-Ticket across the street from the school administration building. The units would be contained within 5 two-story duplexes on the 2-acre parcel that's also home to a Dunkin' franchise. The developer of the project, which is called T-Ticket Landing, is Eric Iskander, who owns the Dunkin' on the property. A representative for the project, attorney Robert Ament, came before the Planning Board last Tuesday to present updated landscaping plans that address concerns from abutters about screening and mitigating potential noise from the development. Mr. Ament said that the developer is proposing to plant 92 new trees, the majority of which would be planted behind the dwellings to provide more screening for abutting neighbors. The parking spaces have been reduced and repositioned to be at an angle to reduce the possibility of traffic problems between residents and people waiting in their cars in the Dunkin' drive-through lane. Mr. Amen also said the play area proposed for the subdivision has been reduced and moved 15 feet away from the property line. He added a chain-link fence with black vinyl will surround the property. Board member Thomas Zine asked if the developer might consider removing the play area altogether. Mr. Zine said preserving the existing root system of existing trees and the wildlife habitats may be more beneficial to the town than including a play area. Member Paul C. Dreyer said he thought that plans for the lot were dense and agreed that removing the play area might allow for more space between the buildings. This comment led member James Fox to say he disagreed with characterizing the development as dense. It's ridiculously not dense. It's only 40% lot coverage, and they're allowed 70, Mr. Fox said. Lot coverage is 48%, Mr. Ament said. Chairwoman Charlotte Harris added, I don't support Mr. Zine's desire to change that play area. I like it just the way it is. Mr. Ament continued his presentation and addressed abutters' concerns regarding the drive-through queue. Mr. Ament reported that neighbors have said the parking will pose a problem as the queue is sometimes so long it winds around the property to Sandwich Road. Security footage from the front entrance of Dunkin' showed that the line reached its greatest length on Christmas Eve. The last car in line did not reach the proposed parking area for the development. Following Mr. Ament's presentation, board members discussed the revisions. Member Patricia Kerfoot appreciated the changes shown in the landscaping plan. The planning department is waiting on engineering referrals, but the planning board moved to close the public hearing. A draft approval of the project will be presented at the next planning board meeting. pending a positive referral from the engineering department. We don't want to put the cart before the horse, town planner Jed Cornock said, but we can put the cart next to the horse. The FJC Brotherhood is accepting new members. The Falmouth Jewish Congregation Brotherhood is now accepting new members. The FJC Brotherhood is an educational and social organization with a calendar of activities and regularly scheduled breakfasts. The breakfasts feature speakers such as U.S. Congressman Bill Keating, TV meteorologist Harvey Leonard, ESPN's Mike Reese, and others. And for more information on that, you can visit fjcbrotherhood.org. We are just at the midway portion of our reading, and regular listeners to the broadcast know it's at this stage in the reading that we move to the obituaries, death notices, and memorials that are listed in that week's Falmouth Enterprise. And for the Enterprise of February 21st, 2025, the first obituary is of Sylvia J. Eldridge of Falmouth, who passed February 13th at the age of 81. She leaves her husband of 61 years, Stanley Eldridge, and many others. Services were held February 19th in East Falmouth. The next obituary is of Anthony Young of Forestdale, who passed at the age of 57 on February 12th. He was born in Izmir, Turkey, and lived in New Mexico before settling in Massachusetts. He was employed by the Army and Air Force Exchange Service at Hanscom Air Force Base. Mr. Young, thank you for your service. No public service is planned at this time. The next obituary is of Alicia M. Soderberg of Wacoit, an astrophysicist whose work in the field of supernovae was celebrated within the scientific community, who passed January 26th at the age of 47. After graduating from Falmouth High School in 1996, she pursued a Bachelor of Science degree from Bates College in Maine. She went on to earn a Master of Science in Applied Math from Churchill College, Cambridge University, in 2002. Her contributions to astronomy were recognized with numerous accolades, including the Annie Jump Cannon Award in Astronomy in 2009. A celebration of life will be announced at a later date. The next obituary is of Robert H. Sampson, Sr. of Falmouth, who passed on February 5th at the age of 83. In addition to his wife of 61 years, he leaves many friends and family. Services were held in Falmouth February 15th. The next obituary is of Craig Lockwood, Sr. of Hyannis, who passed on February 17th at the age of 69. Born to Ann O'Brien and John Lockwood, he served in the U.S. Navy on the USS Nimitz, one of the world's largest warships and part of the Pacific Fleet. Mr. Lockwood, thank you for your service. Visiting hours will be held today, Friday, February 21st, from 4 to 7 p.m. at Chapman Funeral and Cremations in Falmouth. A service will be held in the funeral home Saturday, tomorrow, February 22nd, at 10 a.m., and burial will follow in St. Joseph's Cemetery in Falmouth. The next obituary is of Pamela Day Pelletreau, who passed on February 7th at the age of 85. A memorial service will take place Saturday, March 1st at 11 a.m. at the Church of the Messiah in Woods Hole, followed by interment and a reception in the Woods Hole room. In lieu of flowers, any contributions may be made to the Global Fund for Women. Attention Contributions Office, P.O. Box 97309, Washington, D.C., 20090. And the final obituary is of Walter S. Place, who passed peacefully February 14th. He was born April 5th, 1962. A celebration will be held on Saturday, March 1st, at the Elks Lodge, 140 Palmer Ave in Falmouth from 11:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. with a light lunch. All are welcome to join in sharing memories of Walt at this celebration of life. A burial service will be held this spring at the Center Cemetery, County Road in Woodstock, Connecticut. The following residents, former residents, or family of residents of Bourne, Mashpee, and Sandwich recently died. Claire Collum, 84, of Bourne, died February 17th. Timothy B. Crownenshield, 66, of Sandwich, died February 11th. Patricia L. O'Neill, 96, of Bourne, died February 13th. And Nancy Varney Studley, 91, of Mashpee, died February 8th. And that concludes the obituaries, death notices, and memorials that are listed in this week's Falmouth Enterprise. Back to the news. CAI considering Cape Symphony Building as their new home. Following the sale of the CAI's former home at 3 Water Street to the Woods Hole Community Association and parent public media company GBH's decline to stay rent-free, the community has been wondering where the radio station will set up shop next. In an article posted on CAI's website Thursday afternoon, February 20th, yesterday, a potential partnership with Cape Symphony was announced. GBH has consistently stated its desire to keep CAI broadcasting within the Falmouth community. The Cape Symphony Falmouth campus, which is the former Cape Cod Conservatory behind Highfield Theater on Highfield Drive, has the acoustic capabilities for audio recording and the community space that GBH has been looking for, CAI representatives said in the article. Representatives from GBH have stated that accessibility, ample parking, and community meeting spaces were on their wish list for their new home. The newly renovated state-of-the-art facility, about 4 miles from CAI's current location, is easy to access, and it includes parking and gathering space for public events, GBH spokesperson Nicole Boudreau said. Cape Symphony Executive Director Michael Albaugh said, with GBH's legacy of bringing music to local audiences, we see exciting opportunities for collaboration. No further information about this possible move was made available. From the editorial board, closing Pecasset Mental Health Center is not an option. Like many residents of Cape Cod, we were disappointed to learn Governor Maura Healey's proposed cuts to the Department of Mental Health's budget included the closure of the Pecasset Mental Health Center. It came off as a bad idea to begin with. Shuttering the only state-run mental health facility in the county? It certainly doesn't sound advisable. Our dismay morphed into something else entirely, though, as we watched the greater Cape Cod community come together to fiercely advocate for continued operation of the facility. The more we learned, the worse that objectively bad closure idea started to sound. The proposed closure was the talk of several meetings and forums in the weeks since its announcement, and letters of opposition have come out of town select board meetings from Bourne all the way down to Wellfleet. Parents of children who have sought care at the Pecasset facility have spoken up to share their personal experiences, attesting firsthand to the critical role the 16-bed mental health center plays within the broader Cape Cod community. The stories from parents speaking to the vital services provided there, and from former and current mental health workers about the deep bonds formed with patients who, with virtually no other options, found their way to the Pecasset facility and, in turn, found success and a sense of belonging, had a raw emotional power hard to deny. One former patient wrote in a letter she was treated with dignity and respect at Pecasset, unlike larger, more generalized programs, and the facility was her last stop before she, quote, gained much stability and a strong will to live. The impression left by these testimonies was obvious. The Pecasset Mental Health Center is a place of healing and a place where people in life or death situations are given the care and attention needed to see life as a possibility again. Closing down a place like that should be a non-starter. Rather, what we should be doing is hearing this feedback, recognizing the critical care provided at this facility, and then lifting it up by allocating the funding and staffing it needs to continue to provide such care. These community members, along with local and state elected officials, have banded together, forming a united front that says, we will not let this happen. And that gives us hope. The need for cuts to the state's budget is obvious, but pinching pennies when it comes to the already abysmal state of mental health care, that's the wrong move. The swiftness with which the movement to save the facility materialized is evidence of that. The people have spoken and called out the government on the dissonance. Our government cannot both champion itself on the importance of mental health and then sever a lifeline in mental health services to an entire region. In recent comments regarding the closure of the Pecasset facility and another in Canton, Pappas Rehabilitation Hospital, the governor said the facilities are underused, quote unquote. Based on what we heard, though, that doesn't seem to be the case. She added that the services offered would be directed elsewhere. Redirecting services and patients sounds all well and good, but a promise is just not good enough when the lives of people, especially our youth, are at stake. Is there a plan delineating how exactly those services would be doled to the remaining facilities? The next closest state-run facilities are in Fall River and Taunton. There are a few community health centers which have been touted as great alternative one-stop shops for all mental health and substance treatment. They could be if funding was adequate to support the demand for services, but it's not. So, what comes next? Well, we hope that the governor hears the people's message loud and clear. We feel good knowing that our state and local elected officials are working hard on their constituents' behalf to fight for the Pecasset facility. Sheriff Donna Buckley told the Barnstable County Assembly of Delegates earlier this month that the community has never recovered from the decision to close inpatient facilities 40 years ago, and we think she's right. Mental health crises are a leading cause of homelessness in America. With treatment facilities for those experiencing those types of crises, the region's unhoused population will undoubtedly grow. Subsequent incidents will be exacerbated. Oftentimes, the lack of treatment options all but forces people in crisis, especially individuals with marginalized identities, including people of color, low-income individuals, and LGBTQ+ people, into confrontations with law enforcement. Correctional facilities have seemingly become one of the largest providers of mental health services in the country, and they're just not equipped for that. And without caseworkers to maintain treatment when incarcerated people are released, they're more likely to backslide. Other times, people in crisis wind up in emergency rooms, taking up beds in local hospitals that could have gone to someone else needing care, if only we had a designated treatment facility to send those individuals to. We can all but picture the stress closing Pecasset will put, say, on the already thinly stretched Falmouth Hospital emergency room staff. Why would our government consciously choose that? Is that really in the best interest of the people? Mental health has been a public health crisis in America for generations, and it won't get any better if our government, state and federal, undermines progress by slashing funds and closing facilities. There are already so few inpatient beds dedicated to providing Massachusetts residents with the mental health treatment they need. Eliminating the 16 beds the Pecasset facility provides would be a great disservice to the people of the Cape and Islands. We just hope the governor hears us on that. Petitioners seek a balloon ban, money for urine diversion studies, and Woods Hole police details by Devin Ankeny. Voters at April town meeting will decide 4 articles that were submitted by petition. The articles range from furthering an effort to divert urine from the waste stream to a town-wide ban on helium balloons. The Select Board heard from the petitioners during its meeting on last Monday, February 10th. One article, brought on officially by Christopher McGuire, seeks to ban the sale and release of helium or other light gases balloons. Mr. McGuire is the official petitioner, but his daughter, Faye McGuire, who's 16, is the actual force behind the effort. Faye, who's a junior at Falmouth Academy, presented the article's merits to the Select Board. She said helium and mylar balloons can have significant environmental ramifications. Plastic balloons land in the environment, animals are drawn to them because of the pretty colors and ribbons, and they eat them, she said. They can get tangled up in their intestines, or they can starve because there's obviously no nutritional value in plastic, so they have the sensation of fullness and they just starve to death. The article, Article 19 seeks to halt the sale and prohibit the release of such balloons. Fay said the prohibition would stop events like weddings or funerals from engaging in mass releases of balloons. She added that per her research, no small businesses sell lighter-than-air balloons in Falmouth. She noted that only businesses like Stop and Shop, Shaw's, and Michael's would be affected. Fay said those national companies would not be tangibly affected because their profit margins aren't reliant on balloon sales, whereas a balloon-based small business might be. If town meeting approves the ban, it would impose fines for any violation. If someone releases balloons in town, that person could be hit with a $50 fine. Second offenses could be hit with $100, and third and additional offenses with $200 fines. The ban, though, is meant more to prevent the sale and then mass release of balloons, not to punish a child who accidentally lets go of one. Everyone here, I'm sure, has seen a kid handed a balloon and then they let go and it flies up and the kid's crying, Fay said. So I'm not trying to penalize the toddler. I'm just trying to prevent that scenario from ever happening in the first place. The Select Board also heard from Thomas Crane, who presented Article 18, which would engage a police detail to monitor traffic in, out, and around the ferry terminal in Woods Hole and crack down on big trucks that idle too long in the parking lot. The detail would be assigned to the areas on a regular but trial basis. The article would appropriate $80,000 from the Ferry Embarkation Fund to conduct the trial from July 1st to September 13th. The funding would largely be used to pay for overtime for officers who would then be sent on a 7 days a week, 8 hours a day detail. I think given the police department's funding, this is the most reasonable way to go on that, Mr. Crane said. The other two articles, 16 and 17, pertain to urine diversion. Article 16, brought on by Earl Barnhart, Ron Zweig, Hilda Maingay, and Green Center, Inc., asks that $48,750 be allocated from free cash to conduct a 50-home assessment of potential costs if the town moves forward with urine diversion. That article would simply assess the costs of urine diverting systems and wouldn't involve actual installation. Article 17, though, would ask that $94,320 be used from free cash to actually pay for a 30-home installation and study of urine diversion. This article would involve installing portable, unisex urinals and storage containers at the 30 homes. The systems would then be used to measure the amount of urine collected over a year and how much nitrogen that represents. Article 17 drew some Select Board scrutiny, though, because a 30-home study doesn't meet the 50-home minimum that the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection requires for the purpose of permitting. Chairwoman Nancy Taylor said it seems counterintuitive to conduct a study that couldn't be used in any official capacity. Dr. Taylor also raised the issue of a pending patent held by the petitioners of this article. The Green Center and the petitioners have been pursuing a patent for a urine diverting device since July of 2023. Dr. Taylor asked the petitioners if that prospective product would be what was used in Article 17. The petitioners said no, but indicated that if the device gains its patent, it could be an option users could choose. Mr. Barnhart assured the board that the product's development would only be funded by private monies and not by the public funds that are being sought by the petitioners. In other news, group discusses Habitat Project, rental bylaws, and the reality of affordability by Katie Nelson. Updates on the town's proposed short-term rental bylaw, the affordability of affordable housing, and the Chapter 40B project planned for 48 Benjamin Nye Lane were discussed at the Affordable Housing Committee meeting on February 13th. The outgoing Director of Land Acquisition for Habitat for Humanity, Beth Wade, gave a presentation on the 14-unit Chapter 40B affordable housing development planned for 48 Benjamin Nye Lane. Habitat will be seeking the Select Board's backing for its local initiative program application to the state. LIP, Local Initiative Program, is a state-run housing subsidy program that allows communities and developers more flexibility on housing initiatives as they work together to meet the housing needs in the community. The Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities issues the LIP, and the Select Board will need to approve the application. The 300 Committee Land Trust is purchasing the roughly 56-acre parcel from Ruth and Stephen Augusta in installments paid until January 2026. The 300 Committee will conserve about 48 acres of woodlands in perpetuity. On the parcel, 7.5 acres will be reserved for Habitat for Humanity's 14-home development. Ms. Wade presented changes made to its plans after listening sessions with neighbors. Some of those adjustments include a 45-foot buffer between the project and abutting properties, a relocation of the shared innovative alternative septic system, a reconfiguration of homes, and a promise to neighbors to rebuild an existing rock wall which neighbors said marks a historic property line. The wall will need to be removed to allow construction vehicles onto the lot, but Ms. Wade said Habitat for Humanity will have the wall restored by a mason when construction is complete. The project is still in the early stages of permitting. Construction's not expected to begin until late spring of 2027. Ms. Wade also introduced the Affordable Housing Committee to Habitat for Humanity's incoming Director of Land Acquisition, Noreen Brown. Of the 14 for ownership homes, 7 will be offered at 60% of the area median income, known as AMI, and 7 homes will be offered at 80% AMI. Ms. Wade asked the committee to draft a letter in support of the project to the Select Board. The committee unanimously voted to draft a letter and discussed points they wanted to include: energy efficiency, communication and cooperation with abutters, the fact that all units are affordable, and the collaborative effort to preserve land with the 300 Committee were appreciated by the committee. Chairman David Garrison praised both Habitat for Humanity and the 300 Committee for their efforts. "This is an example of stepping up to meet a need. Thank you," he said. Ms. Wade said, "It's our pleasure to work with the 300 Committee." President of the 300 Committee, Joanne Muramoto, was in attendance and said the 300 Committee is cognizant of and appreciates the need for affordable housing in Falmouth. The short-term rental bylaw. Committee member Elizabeth Klein gave an update on progress being made toward reintroducing a short-term rental bylaw as an article at town meeting. Ms. Klein said Town Manager Michael Renshaw is drafting a mission statement for a special committee to be formed to work on the bylaw. Ms. Klein hoped that Mr. Renshaw would have a draft prepared soon. "There's another Select Board meeting this month, and I'm an eternal optimist," Ms. Klein said. The special committee will be made up of 7 people. The Affordable Housing Committee agreed that a Select Board member, a realtor, a member of the Affordable Housing Committee, and a renter should be represented on the special committee. What is affordable? Committee member Gina Torrielli gave a presentation on housing projects and their actual affordability, quote unquote, for low-income residents. Many projects are offering prices based on 80% AMI and up to 120% AMI. Ms. Torrielli said that about 27% of households in Falmouth earn less than 50% AMI, making even affordable housing impossible for them to afford. Ms. Torrielli said that about 25% of residents are living at 30% AMI or below. Affordable is not so affordable, she said. Availability is another challenge facing residents seeking housing. Fewer families are buying starter homes, which are smaller homes with 1 or 2 bedrooms, then graduating to a larger forever home. Finding and being able to afford a larger home is nearly impossible in the current market for working-class families making less than 80% AMI, Ms. Torrielli said. Residents looking to downsize from a larger home to something more manageable are met with the same challenges. Ms. Torrielli said studio apartments, or apartments with 1 bedroom, only make up about 8% of the town's housing stock. Laura M. Moynihan, Executive Director of the Falmouth Housing Trust, said the idea of a starter home is gone. She added that the average age of a first-time home buyer is about 37. Diversification of housing stock is needed to accommodate a wide population of people seeking housing. If conditions stay the same in Falmouth and young working families have no options to buy a home, we're going to lose our workforce, Ms. Torrielli said. Ms. Moynihan suggested the Planning Board consider adopting Chapter 40Y bylaws, which creates starter home zoning areas for compact 1 to 3 bedroom housing options for families. Ms. Torrielli said that some towns in the Lower Cape area, including Dennis, have adopted home sharing programs which connect senior residents at risk of homelessness with other seniors who are in need of companionship, or residents with room to spare. Ms. Torrielli said diversifying housing stock, looking into zoning bylaw changes, and incorporating home sharing programs were all good ideas that could make a positive impact. We need a lot more, and we're running out of time, she added. Mr. Garrison suggested that Ms. Torrielli give her presentation to town committees, including the Select Board, to stress the seriousness of the housing situation. Have mouth, will travel, Ms. Torrielli answered. From the Housing Inside Out, Seasonal Community Designation Would Benefit the Town, by Laura Moynihan. Massachusetts recently passed the Affordable Homes Act, which creates a seasonal community designation for municipalities in Berkshire County and the Cape and Islands. This act authorizes $5.16 billion in spending. 8 towns in the Berkshires, 9 towns on the Cape, not including Falmouth, as well as Dukes and Nantucket counties, received automatic designation by the state. Any Massachusetts town may opt in if they meet certain criteria. The information and guidance now available from the state indicates that the benefits of a seasonal community designation will be significant for housing. Falmouth can apply for the state to approve its seasonal designation without having to establish exact percentages of seasonal residents at 35% or more. Falmouth can qualify under the criteria of a high rate of short-term rentals in seasonal homes, significant increases in the seasonal population and employees in the summer, and excessive disparities between the area's median income and income required to purchase a market-rate home. The Select Board will need to vote to pursue the designation, followed by a favorable town meeting vote. The most compelling benefit for a seasonal community will be the money. Funding from the state is expected for the development of new housing units, home ownership programs, and rental assistance. State financial assistance is anticipated for public infrastructure improvement for roads, water and sewer lines, and other infrastructure that's needed to support housing. A seasonal community will be authorized to implement a policy to give municipal employees, who are vital to maintaining a year-round community, preference in housing. This may involve priority in affordable housing lotteries or down payment assistance programs. The designation also increases property tax relief measures for year-round residents. It allows for financial support for year-round housing for people involved in artistic and literary activities, and it allows a community to acquire year-round housing occupancy restrictions. The seasonal community designation has some obligations. Designated communities are to adopt bylaws to allow tiny homes by right without special zoning permits, and to allow construction of deed-restricted year-round homes on undersized lots. Not a bad trade-off, given that these bylaws will increase the availability of affordable housing options by allowing for smaller and more efficient housing units. The state can also grant a waiver of any of the requirements if existing zoning regulations adequately address the need for smaller housing units, or there are unique factors in the community that challenge the ability to meet the requirements. If Falmouth gets on board with the seasonal community designation, adding another town to the Cape and Islands Seasonal Community Region can only strengthen the region's ability to secure state funding. Additionally, Falmouth would not want to miss out on any future state legislation specific to a seasonal community that might provide additional assistance for housing or other community needs. The expected financial assistance alone from a seasonal community designation could play a key role in our housing crisis and Falmouth's housing production plan target goal of producing another 280 housing units in the next 4 years. And with that, we have come to the end of our reading of the Falmouth Enterprise for today, Friday, February 21st of 2025. This is your reader, Eric, saying be well, be safe, look after each other. Remember our veterans, especially those we've lost recently. Bye for now.